And in the middle of that afternoon, I am simply sitting around in the living room like I have been, and I experienced what I could only describe then and now still as simply an inner click. And it was very visceral and very clear. And in the moment of that click, I recognized instantly that the animating life force was beginning to drain away. It was beginning to leave. It was beginning to dissipate. And that was the beginning of my body beginning to die. In the instant of that click, I saw with a kind of clarity that I'd never understood before that I was observing my body dying, but I wasn't dying. That I and my body were somehow two different things. That there was an observer aspect to my own being, my own consciousness, that was, again, entirely, perfectly, clearly conscious and aware, and recognizing that the body was beginning to die. But just as with the same crystalline clarity, recognizing that that observing consciousness was not dying. And so it was, again, as if one way of saying it would be that myself, my I, and my body were two different things. And as a part of that recognition then, flooded in an extraordinary freedom, because what that meant in that moment was that the pain in that body was not mine. There is this aware being, this aware consciousness that seemed like me, that was aware the body was dying. And if we break that down a little bit, pull that apart a little bit, we could say that aware consciousness felt like me, just not contained by a body, not limited in this bodily frame. That it was non-corporeal, but still felt like me. And in this third moment of recognition or revelation, what was very clear was that separate but non-bodily sense of self was also dissolving. It was beginning to dissipate. It was beginning to lose its individuality. And what it was losing its individuality in favor of was this sort of merging or dissolving or melting into what is harder to describe than before, which was this sort of all-encompassing allness. We have a lot of words for these things, and none of them quite stack up. So none of them measure up. We could call it allness or wholeness or oneness. But what was being seen and experienced very, very directly was that that individuated sense of self wasn't capable of containing what this was any more than the sense of this bodily self was capable of containing it. That life force was receding in exactly the same ratio that there was the experience of merging into that allness. And what I would stress most of all about this, which never fails to make me tear up, is that if something is entirely whole and all, it cannot possibly be missing anything. And if it cannot possibly be missing anything, then there cannot possibly be a sense of loss. There cannot possibly be a sense of want or need of any kind. And so there wasn't. If there cannot possibly be a sense of loss or need or want of any kind, how could there possibly be fear? There couldn't. And that's how I spent the next few days. Watching that mercury recede into that allness could not have been more beatific or a greater gift. I would entreat anyone who's ever had the opportunity to sit with someone who's dying I'll bet there's moments, if you've had that opportunity, there may have been moments in your own experience when you saw that in someone else. I know I have. Sometimes it looks a little like a distant look in their eye. And this is someone that may be in substantial, let's say, discomfort. But when they get that far away look in their eye, and you can see that they aren't suffering it. They are not. And from my point of view, from my own experience of it, it's something that is not unique to me. It presents itself as an absolutely fundamental ground of simply the ultimate truth of how things are. Which means that there's not a single person here or anywhere that isn't going to meet that eventually. The phrase that I love, and it's a little bold, I think, is that nobody can avoid the truth forever. We can go around and around, cover it over for what seems like a long time. But eventually, some version of that experience, from as far as I can tell, is coming to every single one of us. I think that's good news. Really beautifully good news. In my own case, in the midst of this, when my father comes into the room, which he does periodically, and again, there's nothing really he can do, but he's banging around the house and doing farm chores and house chores and things. And when he comes into the room, there's no impulse.
Take your hand out. Your hand's on the mic, I think.
There we go. When he comes into the room, there's actually no impulse whatsoever to say, "Hey, Dad, I think I'm dying. Also, this body of mine, not that important. You'd be surprised." Because that would actually imply that there was a sense of want or need or lack or something that needed to be done, and there simply was not at all. And so I said absolutely nothing to him. I smiled at him. I felt tremendously loving towards him and said absolutely nothing, which seemed like the right way to hold it, actually, at the time. And often still does, which is one of the reasons I'm surprised to be here. One of the things I was looking forward to talking with everyone here, I'm certain that, before you all got here, I thought, yeah, they already know what I'm talking about to a large extent. And can probably relate to those moments in your own experience when you've had, whether it was a near-death experience or some other kind of transformative spiritual experience, that it can be hard to put into words. And sometimes silence truly is the best vessel for holding it. That's the phrase I often carried around in my head. Because in that lovingness, in that lack of fear, in that lack of any sense of loss or lack or need or want, how could there be anything other than essentially perfect peace, perhaps the peace that passes understanding you may have heard reference to? And in that kind of peace, then, it's impossible to be terribly worried about what must be done, which is one of the reasons it's so simple, one of the reasons it's so quiet, and one of the reasons it's simply so peaceful. By the time I get to the following morning, really still the same state of mind, state of being. There's no sense of needing to do anything. But eventually during the day, there is this thought that arises that I'm really quite surprised by, which is that there is this threshold. It was a little bit visual for me that there was a literal doorway and a threshold. Like, well, that's where you're heading. You haven't crossed all the way through it yet. It's coming swiftly, but you still have some time to hang out here in the anteroom of eternity or whatever. And what arose was a thought that really surprised me, which was, you have a choice. You can go through that doorway or not. And I thought immediately, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't one go towards the peace that passes all understanding? How could that not make exquisite sense? I don't know if any of you even noticed, but this place can be a madhouse. Why wouldn't you go through that doorway? But it was still a question. And to my surprise, there was something of a response that arose, which was, well, you could, and it's a reasonable choice. Absolutely. However, there are some things here that you'd best have done first. And when that arose in my mind, I was shocked, because at 29 years old, I had already spent nearly a decade going, I don't really know what I'm doing here. What am I doing? I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, doing all the things, and I've been to school and stuff. That didn't help that much. I really had absolutely no idea what that meant. But when I stacked that question, you have some, that the idea that I had some things to do here first, up next to, or go through the doorway, there was this hesitation. And to my genuine shock and surprise, something in me said, I think you should stay. And my inner response to that was, I am baffled about what to do here, honestly. I guess I'll have to figure it out if I'm going to stay. And it was going to take a solid decade of coming face to face with many of the things I just described over and over and over in so many other ways and in many other additional experiences, in terms of none of which I planned or expected or sought precisely, in terms of other people in my world, in my life. I eventually ditched everything and walked away from regular adulthood. I sold my home, or I actually gave the keys to my place to someone I barely knew. I sold my car, I sold my business. I said goodbye to the lovely woman that I had been with for a few years, and I disappeared.